California's Assembly Republican Caucus Wednesday called for a special legislative session to investigate an estimated $100 billion in fraud in taxpayer-funded programs. Early Wednesday, Assembly Minority Leader Health Flora and caucus members, they sent a letter to Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom pointing to a new estimate that California may have lost at least $180 billion to fraud across state programs. Flora said the estimate was based on audits, public records, and prior investigations. He called on Newsom to call a special session to determine the extent of fraud and improper payments and advance reforms to strengthen oversight and recover taxpayer funds. Republican lawmakers at a press conference said that they were particularly concerned about fraud and waste in programs meant to help California's homeless population, money being spent on fraudulent hospice programs, and sober living facilities. Now, the comments followed raids by the FBI in Los Angeles April 2nd in an effort to find and arrest those suspected of fraudulently receiving Medicaid dollars as reimbursements for providing hospice care to dying patients. Now, federal agents arrested 15 people who are accused of defrauding $60 million in care expenditures, according to previous reporting by the Center Square. Now, the Center Square reached out to 8 Democrats in the California legislature who have authored anti-fraud legislation in the past or authored homelessness-related legislation. The only Democratic state lawmaker who responded before press time Wednesday sent a text message through their communications director saying that the Republicans are doing nothing but political theater and California Republicans are, quote, clearly performing for Trump. Now, on tax day, the U.S. House held a hearing with Kentucky U.S. Representative James Comer, critical of Democrats' approach to fraud.
Just an attitude among a lot of politicians, and I'm not going to be partisan in here, Mr. Chairman, because you don't want you want this to be a good bipartisan hearing, but there's just an attitude among a lot of governors and a lot of big city mayors that, well, it's okay, it happens everywhere, it's no big deal, it's you know, why do you care? It's just government money. It comes down like manna from heaven. I mean, that's the attitude that a lot of these officials have.
Now, today, a separate House hearing featured Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. Massachusetts U.S. Representative Richard Neal discussed his concerns with some high-profile figures convicted of fraud being pardoned by President Trump. He said that they should be held accountable just as everyone else committing fraud is.
I look at these decisions, and if we're going to pursue fraud, Mr. Secretary, it has to be across the board. And we want an even-handed approach to these fraud investigations, including those whose schemes have cost the American taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars.
Now, at that same hearing this morning in Congress, Texas U.S. Representative Pete Sessions, he said fraud happens everywhere and leaders should want to address it or else.
We cannot fix this without each of you, auditors, who see things and direction we go. But I think that you see some sense of opportunity that lies within the members here that are truly concerned about over and underpayments. We can consume ourselves if we do not fix this problem. We can take away from the availability of money, and we see that when we look at the national debt.
A lot of focus is going to maintain on fraud and finding various pockets of where that may be happening, but there's other areas of taxpayer waste, including $17 billion that the federal government spent last year, keeping up more than 250,000 building empty space, running lights. That's all your money on heat, cooling, and upkeep for space that nobody's using. All of that while the national debt continues to climb. But that's a separate story for a different day, but you can find it right now at thecentersquare.com.